Have you picked up any of these cute little A2 sized patterned paper packs? I've gotten them from scrapbook.com as part of Livestream deals. I think I've gotten some as like free gifts with purchase. They're really cute. They're double-sided. They can be, some of the papers are directional with like the top of the paper being like the clear top, and so you do need to kind of consider that. But as I said, there's a good mix of patterns in each of them, and I have enjoyed working with them in the past, but I don't think I've shared a video for a while, so I wanted to remind you of my A2 paper busting templates. Basically, they show you how to take A2 sized paper and make A2 sized cards without any pattern paper scraps. So we're going to use 4 of them today. I picked up this Holly Express A2 paper pad in live stream deal recently, and so I'm going to use a little bit of each of the products that came in that live stream deal in case you picked it up as well and you want some like more complete ideas. And I'm celebrating Christmas in July kind of by making some Christmas cards, including today's set of cards. So all of my A2 paper busting templates are available for free individual download at jesscrafts.com, or you can purchase a pack of 10 in the Etsy shop to just get them all at once. I'm going to use template number 1, 4, 6, and 7 today, and I am going to, I'm not going to actually make 2 from each of these, because the reason that I picked these specific ones is they each use half of the A2 paper but cut in the same way. So rather than like they all have a top, they all use a top half and bottom half as opposed to a left half and right half. Hope that makes sense. And so I thought it would be a good way to show you too that you don't have to make 2 of the same card. If you're working with these paper busting templates, you can kind of mix and match them a little bit. I know since it's only 2, it's not usually a big deal. People don't always mind making 2, but some of my other templates where you maybe make like 6 or 8 of the same card, people prefer to kind of mix it up a bit. But anyway, let's pick some A2 patterned paper to use today. I like the idea of, I kind of like to look at my sketches and see what they're going to call for so I can get a good idea of what pattern paper would work well for them. So this one is like one of the simplest versions of what you can do with this is cut it in half and leave a good amount of white space. If you're concerned about a lot of white space, I do have a video that shares that. So I think here I would generally probably lean towards a bold pattern paper to show off. This one is cutting them into strips, and the smallest strip is 1/2 inch. So I don't want any pattern that is too large. It doesn't tend to happen too much with these A2, but like say this pattern here, it actually, they're kind of like rows or stripes across. That could get a little bit tricky if I'm cutting 1/2 inch and I'm cutting a 1/2 inch that looks a little awkward. So I'd probably avoid that, for instance. These are a little bit on the bigger side, so a 1/2 inch strip might mean that I'm only seeing like Santa hats or Santa beards. And so I'm going to kind of, take those into account. This is a good one because the pattern is much more like kind of random and full. There's not like big gaps between them. So I think this could work really well. So I'll pull that one out. This one is, I think, really cool for very, very fast cards because you could just put a big old fancy sentiment or just make a whole little scene inside, but you don't have to do anything with the pattern paper because it has that nice border and a very clear area for embellishments. And then this one again is in those rows. So I probably wouldn't use it for the stripe paper, but it might work really well for, say this one, number 6 and number 1, where I'm wanting to maybe choose a bolder pattern. So let's pick 3 more sheets. I'm gonna take one of these. Although I was planning on using blue for my mat, so maybe I won't choose one with a blue background. We'll go back to that one from the front. And then I thought about maybe doing something that isn't so Christmassy, but all the embellishments, and I've already stamped some sentiments, so I think that I'm okay with keeping it really Christmassy today. Always consider the opposite side. Some of these are solid, which can work well as well. And I do like the combination of a solid and a more pattern because then I have a really clear place to like put a very readable sentiment, for instance. And so let's try out this one. Okay, So we can start by cutting them all in half because we're gonna need that. Some of these we'll make 2 of because we're making 6 cards. It's just how many sentiments I cut out today, so it's what I'm prepared to start making. Now, half of an A2. An A2 card is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so these are the same. And so half of it is 2 3/4 inches. And when you're using a tool like a paper trimmer, please follow all manufacturer safety instructions. My trimmer is able to cut through a couple of sheets of paper at once. So that is why I chose to cut through a few of them. And then I was like, maybe I'll just do 2 really simple cards. And then which are like, I kind of think like sometimes it's a balance between what's my favorite and what's like most fun to do. Okay, I'm gonna cut this one for paper busting template number 4. The measurements are right there on the sketch. It's 2 3/4 by 2 3/4 to create a square for the center. And then this piece that's left is 1 1/2 inches. And we're gonna use a little bit on the top and bottom to make it look like it's one continuous strip of paper down the center, but that gap is covered by the square in the center. So we can start organizing these into little trays or something like that so you don't confuse which pieces. When you're working with a couple of templates at one time, I think that's extra important. So let's take a look at paper busting template number 6. It's going to take these and cut them into 1 1/2 on each side. So I'm going to cut 1 1/2 inches off each side, and what's going to be left in the middle is 1 1/4 by the 2 3/4. And the reason I did it this way is because I specifically want to make sure that I am cutting them off the sides so that it will kind of piece back together when I go to create the card, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So when I create my card, I am going to be able to put them all side by side like this, and the pattern's going to be continuous across. I personally like that look, so I made sure that when I showed you how to cut them, I didn't just cut the 2 1 1/2s next to each other and then they would be split across the card. I cut it the way it is on the card, on the final product. Okay. And then this last one, similarly, I show you cutting them in the same order that they appear on the final card, rather than maybe cutting the 2 pieces for 2 different cards next to each other or something like that. So that is a very intentional decision. So since, you know, I made it as an intentional decision, I wanted to call it out to you so that you can have the most success with the final product, especially if you, like me, prefer that orientation. So this one is going to call for them to be 4 1/4 inches wide. And then we are going to cut them at 1/2 inch. So I cut 1/2 inch off. And the next one is 1 inch. So I am measuring from the end. I'm at 2 1/4. So I'm going to measure to 1 1/4. And that will give me my 1 1/4, 1 inch, and 1/2 inch piece. And again, they can all puzzle back together. This is especially might be relevant if you're working on single-sided paper. I think in this instance, I might actually like flip one of them over and mix up the patterns, so it won't be as important, but I want you to be easily successful when following my templates. Okay, and then the final one is this, where we just cut the papers in half. So I've set aside some for that, and I'll cut this as a second one of one of the other sketches. With my paper busting templates, I call for mats. They're generally 1/4 inch bigger than whatever piece of patterned paper that I am working with, but in some instances, like here, when the piece of patterned paper stretches all the way across the card, the mat isn't 1/4 inch bigger on that side. So for instance, template number 1, and this is written right there on the template, which again, I will leave links to. You can download them for free, and it is 4 1/4 by 3 inches because my piece of pattern paper is 4 1/4 by 2 3/4 inches. And so I have this scrap that is 4 1/4. I need 2 pieces that are 3 inches, so I'll go to 6 and then 3. And so I have the cardstock mats for those two. And I did try to pick a cardstock mat that I thought would work well for a variety of the patterned papers. I picked this blue and I realized maybe with the holly leaves it's not ideal, but it actually works really well with the other side of the pattern paper, so I might utilize that side of the pattern paper just to be a better match. I decided to pick one color of cardstock while I'm creating multiple cards from the same collection, just to keep things a little bit easier. Okay, so let's look at one of the other templates. This is a 2 3/4 inch square, so I'll use some 3-inch mats. That's too small, that scraps, so I'll have to pick another one. And then again, these pieces here at the top and bottom, I am extending them all the way to the edge of the card, so the mats are only 1/4 inch bigger on one of the sides. So this is about 3 inches, so I'll cut it down just a little bit. I have my 3-inch square, and then just continuing with using up as many scraps as I can. These are 1.5 inches wide, so I need, since the width is the larger one, I'm gonna need the 1 3/4 inch. I know I'm saying a lot of measurements, but again, they're on the templates, so if you prefer to follow along that way, that will be really easy to do. And for the top, it's a 1-inch piece, so I need a mat that's only 1 inches because I'm going to extend it all the way to the top. And the bottom, it is 1 3/4, so my mat can also be 1 3/4. So again, this is where those trays come in handy because I can put those mat pieces in with the pattern paper pieces, and then I can do all of my mat cutting at one time. Next up, sketch number 6. You can see that I tend to kind of go through the process of like all the pattern paper, all the cardstock. I'm gonna do all the assembling, then all the embellishment. I find that works best. And so these are also 2 3/4 inch tall, so my mat's gonna be 3 inches tall. I do call for 1/4 inch all the way around on these ones. So I'll look, this is almost 3 inches. So what if I'm like, okay, I'll cut it down. I'll try to get all the mats I need out of this. I am going to need 2 mats that are 1 3/4. This time I can cut those next to each other because it doesn't matter. We're working with solid paper. And then the final mat is 1.5 because the final piece of paper was 1 1/4 inch wide. And so I was able to get all of those, keep it organized, move on to our final sketch. And I don't know that any of these scraps will be the right size. I was like, this one's 3/4, which it is. I could actually probably get a mat out of that for this one. So here again, they extend all the way across the paper, so I just need it to be 1/4 inch bigger on one side. So they're all gonna be 4 1/4 and then 1/4 inch bigger, so the half will get 3/4. So that's what I'm saying. I think I could use this one because it's about 3/4 of an inch for the top. And then this could be cut down to 4 1/4. And then I will cut the other mats that I need. So I need one to be the 3/4 of an inch. I need one to be 1 1/4. I am making 2 of this card, so I need 2 of all of these mat measurements. And then 1 1/2. Which I think that 1 1/2 left me with the 1 1/4 I need for another card, so I just need a 1 1/2 inch. And I'm gonna have to, I wanted to dig through my scraps till I find, oh, that's 1 1/2 inches. I'm getting really lucky today using up all these cardstock scraps. Now I am left with a little pile of cardstock scraps from all that cutting. I would say this one might still be able to be used for a mat, but these ones probably not. So what I would say with these ones, as many of you know if you've watched my videos before, glue them together and we'll use them to pop up elements later on the card or a future card. So basically replacing foam tape by gluing together some layers of cardstock. Most of these have one that's like right about the same size as it, so I'll probably just glue those together and cut off the extras and make that my trash, but now I've saved a couple of things from the bin. So for each card, I'm going to add adhesive to all of my cardstock mats and my pattern paper. In some cases, it's better to like glue the pattern paper onto the mat and then onto the card. In this particular case, it doesn't really matter. I am using a pink card base. You can make your own A2 cards out of 8.5 by 11 pattern paper without any pattern paper scraps. I have a video on that, but basically you're just cutting an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper or cardstock in half and then folding it in half, or scoring it and then folding it in half. And the reason I'm using a colored card base today is, one, some of these have a bit of white space, and one recommendation that I have for when your cards do have a fair amount of white space is that it looks better usually, sticking to me, when you are using a colored card base. It doesn't read quite as blank, for one. I am trying to line these up, so I am putting things down pretty gently at first, but also I've noticed over time that there's certain colors of cardstock that I just have an excessive amount of in my collection, and one of those happens to be pink. Not because I don't like pink or use pink, but just like for a while, I gotta make sure that these are in the right order, which they're not. Switch. Okay. Like for a while, Michaels sold a pack that was just like various colors of pink. And so it was easy to acquire lots of pink, but you know, maybe they didn't have as many, like there wasn't a pack that had multiples of a different color. So I wound up with more pink than maybe I needed, because I thought, oh, I'm running low on pink. And then I maybe wasn't. So anyway, I'm just trying to use up some of the cardstock I have. And that can be, of course, by making mats for them, or for my cards with that color, but also just making card bases, especially a light color like this pink. I can easily still write in this. I also like to often include jokes in my cards, and those are free printables at jesscrafts.com. So I'll try to remember to link you to those too, because I do have Christmas specific themed ones. So I'm gonna do that with all the cards. Glue it down according to the sketch. You can follow the sketches. They're all very simple. Like this one is just similarly just kind of spacing out those strips in ascending order. They get bigger as they go. This one I just showed you. This one is the one that's maybe a little bit tricky, because you're gonna put that piece directly on the top, directly on the bottom, and there's gonna be a big gap in the middle, and you're gonna cover it with that square. So in case that was a little unclear, then this one, of course, you're just placing it wherever feels good on the card. And then for embellishments, I wanted to use the other things that came in the live stream deal with this patterned paper pack. So there was a stamp set with its coordinating dies, so that you could cut a word and then cut it out with the coordinating dies, and then there's some images. One of the reasons I actually liked this particular set is that these are kind of fun to put on envelopes, and I, for whatever reason, have always really liked stamping on my envelopes when I'm sending cards, so I could see using a lot of these for that. Especially, it's a little bit easier when you're hand delivering cards, but in the past, I personally have had success. I don't know what the official rules are. I don't want anyone to have trouble. But on a envelope that I am sending in the US, in the past, I have been able to stamp a design like here on the back flap or something, and it not interfere with the reading of the address or like the postage. Like, you know, they need to have a certain amount of their own like stamps and cancellations and that kind of thing on them, but stamping on the back has not been an issue in my experience. Okay, so I decided that I would stamp Christmas wishes. I used the same blue paper that I picked out for the mats so that I would be able to tie that color back in, and also I thought that it coordinated well. And then I also picked a dark green, because there's dark green throughout the collection, just because to me that adds a little bit of interest. Of course I could have stamped it in black, but honestly, looking at the collection, there's not really a lot of black. So the black might kind of stand out, and here this really dark green, which is also very, very readable, blends in a little bit more with the collection, kind of pulls a new color in. Okay, so the die set that came with it. So there was this dies that coordinate with the stamps, but then there was also this Christmas train die set. This is very, very cute. It makes this whole big Christmas train. Very cool, special card. However, that would be incredibly time consuming. And I want to just make a few cards with this collection before, because like, I don't know, I struggle sometimes if I only make one really, really gorgeous card with a big pack like that, I feel like, oh, that wasn't a very good value for my money. But if I make, you know, one or two really, really special cards with it, but then I make like a handful of easier, more simple cards with it, then I'm balancing those two things out. So from this Christmas train, I actually just picked the little Christmas trees. And I don't know that they are ideal for this busier background, but I will use those on other cards. And the freebie that I got when I placed the order for the Holly Express Christmas train live stream deal was these North Star shapes. And I thought, well, I bet you some of you guys got them too. I know some people like to shop at scrapbook.com, so let me use those. I used them with the scrapbook.com holographic paper, specifically my scraps. So I went in, I opened my holographic paper because I thought stars and Christmas trees could look really good with those. And I just pulled the scraps and cut as many trees or stars as I thought I could get out of the different sizes, and I put them in a tray here with 6 sentiments. I can make 6 cards, and using up these various die cuts. I thought the words could balance nicely with the larger stars. I did decide to go with both silver and gold because those are very classic Christmas colors, but also you can see those like brown elements that I think pair really well with the gold in the collection. And so I will go ahead and assemble the various cards according to the sketches, add some embellishments, and show you those decisions. So I was able to keep going, and I made 5 more cards with the different pieces that I cut from the A2 patterned paper, and I have no patterned paper scraps. In fact, I was able to go into the scraps for both the plain cardstock, that's the background, and my holographic cardstock from scrapbook.com. So I felt good about this mix of like no scraps for my new stuff, using some of my old scraps, using a little bit of every product that came in the live stream deal because I had a little bit of the stamp set, the die set, the paper. I even used the freebie that came with it. So it feels good to kind of start getting in there and using something, because I think you see those really good deals where you get a bunch of products in one, and maybe there was one that you really loved, but making sure that you get to use them all. Of course, there's going to be some beautiful fancy cards I can create with that train die set, but just getting a few basic cards out of them really kind of enhances the value for me. So if you want to download these templates, they are at jesscrafts.com. I will link the specific templates in the video description. They can be downloaded individually for free or bought in a pack in the Etsy shop. And I did use a little bit of fake foam tape where I glued those 2 layers of cardstock together. I mentioned that before with my scraps. I did use those to pop up some of these trees. For instance, I basically kind of came up with 2 designs, one where like it was the sentiment with the trees next to it, or it was the sentiment layered over the star, and then I just kind of used it on different cards so that I didn't have to keep thinking up a new idea each time. And I did use a mix of the sides of the pattern paper. So this case, there's only the one side of the pattern paper, but on the others, like I had both the holly leaves and the stripes, or I picked the stripes on this side, which is the opposite side of like this paper, just so that I was using a variety of patterns from the collection. If you found this video helpful, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with the share to your crafty community, subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video.